knowledge about the technical knowledge. That's why we host this kind of training. So, all right, the curriculum started, and you have finished the learning of the theory, and now it's time for you to dive into the water and for some real-time operation. So we have several subjects today. So you need to understand the pressure of the water, and also you have to learn how to use the mouthpiece all together. So all right, maybe let's take a look. So will the all volunteers going down into the water? Yes, and actually we prepare the diving suits for the volunteers. So today they will do some hands-on operation. So maybe first of all you can give us some briefing or introduction about the classes and the training today. And we understand that some of the volunteers, they have other jobs, they're not familiar with the diving. So we will give them some training about the diving techniques. So for this kind of tank, we are quite familiar with that. I used to dive with this kind of air tank. And for this one, it's more technical. And this is actually a very technical toolkit that we use for the maritime rescue. Once again, I would like to give you some introduction about this event. So today we're having the Maritime Search and Rescue Training and Contest in Tianjin. We have hundreds of volunteers coming from different regions in China and come here for the training. So even though they are not professionals, but they will engage in the search and the rescue training. They may not understand the technical skills and the knowledge. That's why they come here for some learning. And today we are providing some professional training for these volunteers so that they understand how to properly conduct the search and the rescue work. So, as all of us are quite kind-hearted, but we need to understand how to do it well in order to help others. So now we have an expert team under the Ministry of Transport. They are coming here to provide some training for the volunteers. We have also set up 6 rescue teams all around China, and our institution is responsible to provide training for the volunteers. So you are quite professional, and also you bring all of these high-end apparatus for us. Have you ever used this kind of devices? No. Have you ever seen this kind of apparatus? Well, actually, it is my first time to see this kind of technical toolkit. So my job today here is to learn about all of these equipments. Where do you come from? I come from Henan province. So I realize a lot of people actually coming from the central area of China. In that area, they also have some rivers. That's why the maritime search and rescue is very important in that area. And later on, we also have a delegation from the Western China. Actually, it requires higher standards for the Western delegation. And they have to receive some training in order to do some professional search and rescue work. Let's give us more introduction about the tank. For this kind of tank, it's very easy to carry. It's quite convenient. You can take it with you anywhere. You could see it is quite light in weight, And also the capacity is around 55 liters. And also you could see a really long cable together with this kind of tank. For this kind of hose or cable, it is around 120 meters long. It may not necessarily go down into the water, but you can place these cables in the place you want. All of these cables can be floating on the surface. And I realized that there are some communication lines inside of the cable. Yes, for the red line is actually the communication cable. So for this kind of cable, it can help the divers to connect with the people who are sending instructions on the ground. Well, I realized that actually the hood is quite different. Let's take a look. It looks really professional and technical. So for this kind of hood, it's quite safe and secure. It can protect your head and also your face. This kind of glass can endure very high pressure. And some people are actually their first time to see this kind of professional toolkit. They really cherish this opportunity to learn about the professional skills about the search and rescue work. So what about this one? This is also a scuba tank. It goes with this kind of hood. So for this kind of backup tank, it can actually provide extra gases or air to the divers for their rescue. In some situations, there may be time there are some interruption or malfunctioning of the underwater air supply system. So that's why we have this kind of alternative tank. It can provide extra air to the divers to ensure they're safe and secure. So this kind of tank can be connected to the cable as well. So when the air passes through the valve, you can turn on the emergency valve. And the air is available for the diver. In this area, we have another type of valve, and this valve is also an alternative valve for this apparatus. You have to turn on the two valves in order to get air into your mask. We have provided a lot of information about this kind of devices to our volunteer. Do you think this kind of information is useful? Yes. So for this kind of apparatus, where can we get? Excuse me, where do you come from? I come from Henan. And used to work in the Danjiang water tank. At that time, we realized a situation that one person fell down into the river, and one diver actually took this kind of alternative tank and dived into the water for the rescue. So this kind of apparatus can be shared among different regions. So all of these apparatus can be transferred from different regions, but the most important thing is that the volunteer knows how to use this kind of device. For this kind of devices, typically it is quite expensive. So we can borrow or ask for some of these devices to be transferred from other regions. So there are a lot of coordination between the government agencies and the volunteers for the joint effort for the search and rescue. So first of all, you have to know what is it. And after you receive these kind of devices, you know how to use it. Otherwise, this kind of devices will be useless for the volunteers. Alright, we can see a lot of volunteers, they're learning the skills on how to use this kind of tools. So once again, dear viewers, today I'm at the scene on the Maritime Search and Rescue Training and Contest for volunteer. And today there were many volunteers gathering here to learn the knowledge on the maritime search and the rescue. And I realized that some people have a certification for the diving. But today, when you're gathering here, you may get to know more information about the equipment. And also, you will learn some of the technical skills on how to cooperate with your partners. For example, you have to share the same scuba tank when you're down in the water. For example, for one of the volunteers, they have to pay attention to the condition for his or her partner when she is diving underwater. So it is a very difficult task. So today, as we can see, there are many volunteers gathering here to learn the knowledge, and many social forces are actually engaged in this kind of operation. So by doing that, more and more people will know how to protect themselves and save others. As we can see, we have a stronger team for the volunteers. They also contribute to the search and rescue work. I realized that some of people are ready to dive into the water. Let's go to another side to take a look. So here they're talking about how to share the air tank. So later on, they will give us a demonstration. So for the professional team, they will do some demonstration. So how long have you been in this industry? I have been working on this for 6 years and also provide training for 2 years. So before you dive inside the water and save others, you actually spend 2 years to train others on how to use these kind of devices. Do you have any certificate? Well, I have a diving certificate. So for this kind of operation, it doesn't require much. That's why so many volunteers are interested in this kind of operation. Let's take a look on how they operate. Now you can see a life raft and also some simulant. This is also one of the training subjects. Alright, you can see there are some man-shaped models and the simulant. And later on, I will give you more information on the simulant. Now the volunteers are doing training right now. Excuse me, are you a volunteer? Yes. Are you ready to dive inside the water? Yes. So first you will observe what are the instructors are doing, and then you will have some hands-on drills. So for this kind of air tank, it is quite complicated in nature. When you travel overseas, actually you're not bringing an air tank with you. But if you want to rescue someone from the water, you have to make sure that you know how to use this kind of air tank. And also you have to be noticed on the water condition. But if you dive inside of the water, the situation gets more complicated because the visibility is quite limited. So we have to consider all of those facets. So can you share with us some of the story for the rescue? Before I came to Tianjin, I worked in the Dalian training station. We have a boat rescue and a personnel transfer. At that time, I was a freshman and I saw that my master dived into the water and he found someone who was drowning. And he actually used a rope and towed the victim on the surface. And then later on, I dived inside of the water and I realized that the boat is already upset and it is very difficult for me to find the victim. And that was my first experience. I feel quite panic for the rescue work. And also at that time, I realized the person who was trapped inside of the water was stuck by some of the parts of the boat. It is very difficult for me to drag him out. Alright, we could see these volunteers are ready to dive inside of the water. So first, I would like to give you some background information why we're at a swimming pool. Because today we are doing some drills and training, so that's why we choose a swimming pool instead of a beach. So for the depth of this swimming pool is about like 3 meters, and it is actually a simulation for the diving. So we can see they're quite professional. As we can tell from their gestures, they're actually sending out signals to each other. Now they're demonstrating on how to share an air tank underwater, meaning that one of the air tank is disabled. So the 2 volunteers, they have to share one scuba tank. Let's take a look. So actually it's very difficult for me to see what is happening down there. Maybe it's more clear if we can get inside of the water. And actually we have a lot of subjects to cover today, but I will cover this section. So in addition, for our forces to go down into the water and save the victims, we also have some robots who can assist the search and rescue. And later on, we can see some of the footage that was shot by the robots to understand what's happening down the water. And later on, we will give you a demonstration on how the robot is assisting the maritime search and rescue work. Alright, I realized that these 2 volunteers are ready for share the scuba tank. Maybe first of all, we can take a look on the robot. So earlier, there is an AI conference that was being held in Tianjin. And also, there are a lot of AI robots that was designed by different countries attend a contest for maritime search and rescue. Let's take a look on what it is doing. So I realized this kind of robot used to be in the contest for the AI competition. So we can see this device, this AI robot, is actually floating on the surface. Can we see some footage that was shot? No. We're just starting the process for the AI robot. So maybe earlier we seen some of these AI robots being operating in a maritime search and rescue work. So we have another gentleman actually coming from Wuhu, from China. Let's take a look on the controlling. So from my perspective, I can see the footage quite clear. And it is quite easy to control the AI robot. So at this point, the AI robot has kept a distance from the volunteers. So you can see the water is very clear. Where are our volunteers? I believe in that area. These are the 2 volunteers. So recently, we realized that the AI robot has been playing a very essential role in the maritime search and rescue work. However, in the training base, the functionality of the AI robot is relatively weaker than the others. Now we can see we are still placing the cables, so we still need to give some time for the AI robot. So for AI robots, maybe it is not as intelligent as human beings, but still it can provide some assistance for the rescue work. In some dangerous areas or risky areas, we may want to use the AI robot for an attempt. Alright, let's see what are the 2 volunteers are doing. Now the instructors have done their work. It is the turn for our volunteers. So just 1 round. So you could start. Please dive into the area of the AI robot. So can you give us some demonstration in this area so all the viewers can see what you're doing right now? So now we are simulating a situation that one of the scuba tank is disabled. So the person in red suit, actually we're simulating a situation that his air tank is disabled. So he has to depend on his peer for breathing. So these 2 volunteers have to hold 1 scuba tank. So just give us a demonstration. So you can see the person in red have to hold the scuba tank from his peer. And the other one have to share 1 mouthpiece. So for these 2 people, they have to hold each other really tight. So it is a process. They have to take turns to inhale from the scuba tank. This is what we call the pair share of the air scuba tank. In this situation, one of the divers have some disability of his scuba tank. I can see these 2 volunteers, they are quite professional. Actually, the most dangerous situation is that the oxygen was cut off underwater. So there were 2 ways for you to solve that problem. So 2 volunteers go down the water at the same time so that these 2 people can share 1 scuba tank. And The other way we can solve that problem is that you can take a backup scuba tank. And the capacity is around 77 liters. The major one is the 50 liters. As you can see, the capacity is quite large, and also it can help 2 people to breathe inside of the water. Now we can see these volunteers are taking some trainings right now. Maybe we can go to another area to check out the AI robot. I believe many of the volunteers, they are quite eager to learn some of the skills for the search and rescue. This is quite important for all of them. And later on, these volunteers will be divided into different groups, and they will compete with each other. And there were 4 teams all together: the North China team, the Central China team, Southern China team, and the Western China team. They will conduct a series of subjects for the contest, including the targeted cable placement, the first aid treatment, and also some towing, life-saving, etc. Now you can see these volunteers, they're actually trying to use the apparatus. Now the volunteers are trying to use the panel to control the AI robot. It is quite easy to do that. For example, in the future, if they have an AI robot at hand, they know how to use it to assist the search and rescue work. I would say even though it is an AI robot, but if these volunteers knows how to control that, meaning that it is quite convenient to use. So can you tell me what are the advantages and the disadvantages of the AI robots? So for the AI robots, we have to charge them. So we have to consider the battery volume of these AI robots. And in some dangerous or complicated water area, we can use the AI robot for assistance. This is more safe and secure. I believe all of these AI robots have been engaged in some of the rescue work. Can you share with us some of the examples on some extreme cases? For example, sometimes there are a lot of seaweeds or logs that was hidden inside of the water. This will make the water area more sophisticated. And also some of the currents are quite rush inside of the water. It is more safe to use an AI robot for the search and rescue work. And for the AI robot, they can dive as deep as 300 meters. It is actually mission impossible for human beings. For human beings, they can dive down to 60 to 70 meters. However, for an AI robot, it can dive like 4 or 5 times as deep as human being. But what about the flexibility about the AI robot? That could be a problem. If we compare the AI robot to a human being, I would say it is not as flexible as a human being, because there is a program inside of the AI robot. It has to follow some processes. So in terms of the speed, maybe the human beings are more efficient. However, we can use the AI robot to have an initial discovery of the underwater condition. So maybe sometimes the AI robots can work together with human beings. This may be more efficient for the search and rescue work. There are many situations we have to consider. Nowadays, when we use the AI robot, we just want to provide some pre-screening of the underwater condition. So it will lay a foundation of our divers to conduct their work. So that's what I mean. So we have to use the AI robot to explore the underwater condition so that we can provide some useful information for the divers. And actually, the rescue work is actually conducted by human beings. Right? Maybe let's ask some feedback and opinion from our volunteers. So you have been operating this AI robot. How do you feel? Do you think it's difficult? It's not difficult. We used to control a manned aerial vehicle. I think this kind of AI robot is quite similar to UAVs. I believe there are many AI robots available all around China. And in Jiangxi province, from time to time, we may utilize this kind of technology to assist the human beings on the search and rescue work. And actually, in the Ganjiang region and the river, the current is quite rush. I think it's really secure to use this kind of AI robot. So in the past, we tried to have divers dive inside of the water. However, we realized that the water condition is quite sophisticated and the visibility is quite restricted. That's why we think the AI robot is quite important for us. Now we can see all of these volunteers are quite passionate. They want to learn more skills on search and rescue. So these people are actually just volunteers from all sectors of the society. They just want to contribute to the maritime search and rescue work. Even though they may encounter some challenges and risks during the search and rescue work, but they are still willing to learn more from the rescue through the training. Now what we are doing is that we want to improve their capability in the search and rescue in the future. Right, let's go back to the other section to see the demonstration. This is demonstration on underwater air supply interruption. And we just talk about like two solutions. So some people are using the shared Scuba Tank and some people are using the alternative Scuba Tank. Well, let's look at another subject. This is what we call deer towing, life-saving. So we have an expert from Tianjin Maritime Search and Rescue Center. So welcome. First of all, can you give us some introduction about the forces that we have for the maritime search and rescue? So we have volunteers. So what are the members or forces that will be engaged in the maritime search and rescue? So we have 5 forces in China. We have the national team, what we call the technical and professional team. That is from the Beihai Search and the Rescue team. So they are quite expertise in diving. And also we have the South Sea Search and Rescue team and the East Sea Search and Rescue team. All of those are national training teams. And also we have the military to support us in the maritime search and rescue. So these are the forces from national defense. And we can see a lot of PLA members, they will come to the front line for the maritime search and rescue. So military will be engaged in the maritime search and rescue. And also we have some government forces to participate in this rescue work. So will them count as the professional forces? No, they actually have amateurs. And also we have some commercial vessels who will be engaged in the maritime search and rescue work. So for these vessels, they will also help to save lives. And also they will save each other on the sea. For example, at a port, some of the tugging vessels, they're also the major forces for the rescue. And last but not least, it is the volunteer team who will perform the task for maritime search and rescue. So actually you are the person in charge for the Tianjin Maritime Search and Rescue Center. So from the past few years, do you see a growing number of volunteers? How many volunteers do we have in the center? In Tianjin, we have some volunteers, for example, from the harbor companies. And these people are quite fixed. And also, we work together with a local rescue team. When we are organizing some activities, we also invite volunteers from the Blue Sky Rescue Team. In general, we have a growing number of volunteers participate in the search and rescue work. For the Blue Sky Rescue Team, actually they have over 100 members participating in the training. So what are they doing now? What is the competition subject? Actually, we are doing 2 drills. On the right side is the boat rescue of people who are drowning. I could see there were 3 people on the boat. So you can see this boat can accommodate 4 people. And the 2 people, they're actually helping to move on with the raft. And the 3rd person is responsible to save the target, which is a simulate. So for the people on the 2 sides, they're responsible for the paddling. They need to make sure that the direction is correct. Can we test the speed? For example, we could understand how fast it is to save a simulate. Alright, we will put the simulate back and then they will do a demonstration. This is the way how we train the volunteers. So this is a local team. So for these volunteers, they're actually students. They're actually from the universities. They're university students and also they're volunteers. Why they want to participate in this maritime search and rescue team? Because for these people, in the future, they will work in the maritime industry. So this kind of training will be beneficial for their future career. That's why they would like to participate in this kind of training. And during this kind of training, they can learn from each other and also gain more knowledge about the maritime search and rescue. In Tianjin, actually, we have 4 delegations. So for this kind of subjects, they are competing on the speed. But of course, we have to consider whether they operate properly. For example, when they're saving the people who are drowning, they need to pay attention to a lot of details to ensure that the people who are drowning are not injured second time. Well, actually, it looks simple on a swimming pool, but if you're doing this on sea, maybe it is another story. Well, even though they're operating in the swimming pool, it still requires a lot of skills for the two people for the paddling. If they're not cooperating in an effective way, so maybe some of the time will be wasted. Alright, so we will count the time. We will do a full demonstration. So you can see 3 people on the boat. So 2 people are paddling, and the third person is responsible to save the people who are drowning. Easier said than done. As you can see, the paddling actually requires a lot of skills. Last year, I actually used to experience the dragon boat racing. So you have to catch up with each other of the frequency of the paddling. It looks quite easy for the 2 people to paddle the raft. For this kind of raft, actually it's quite different from a dragon boat. You have to consider the current of the water, and also you have to consider the wind. So it requires a lot of work for them to cooperate with each other. So you can see the raft is not come in a straight line. So it looks good. It's not a mistake. They have to be careful about the simulate. So as you can see, the 3 volunteers, they're discussing what may be some of the remaining problems. So the purpose for them is to save the people who are drowning on the surface. So it is actually a considerate task. For the training, they will learn a lot of skills, so in the future they can apply all of those knowledge in the real-time search and rescue. They just try to help others, try to devote themselves in the rescue endeavor. It is quite respectful. Maybe we could give them some time for a rest. I want to know why you want to become a volunteer. Actually, at my second year of the university, I'm also a volunteer in this rescue center. And my major is naval navigation. In the future, I will be working on a vessel. I believe all of these skills will be helpful for myself. It is very important for me to learn how to operate the raft. These are the must-have skills for navigation. Thank you. Actually, all of these volunteers, they are practicing. They would like to compete with other teams. Now I can see one of the volunteers, they are wearing a very professional mask. So it is the volunteer who is putting on some of the professional gear for the diving. So let's look at the other side. I think this team is quite different from the university team. And this team is actually coming an economic zone in Tianjin Search and Rescue Center. This is the Lingang Rescue Team. So for this gentleman, he's also a volunteer. How old are you? I'm 52. Where do you come from? I'm actually coming from Shandong province. How long have you been a volunteer? How long have you joined this rescue team? Well, this gentleman is already over 50 years old, and she has been participating in these joint forces for a long time, several years at least. Why do you want to join this team? What is your job? I actually work at the harbor, at the port. So my responsibility is to pulling the anchor on the vessels when those vessels approaching the harbor. So for this kind of volunteer, it is your part-time job, yes. So now what we are doing is the service towing life-saving. And later on, the volunteer will show you how they do the towing life-saving on the water. So maybe you can have a competition on the towing life-saving operation. All right, so we may have a contest. We just talked about a lot of operation underwater, and now we can have some competition on the service towing life-saving. So all the contestants will be in the same track. So they have to drag the simulant back to the other side. Don't worry about it. Just give us the demonstration. Just choose maybe 2 of the towing methods for the life-saving. So we will hold the model and doing the towing life-saving demonstration. I totally understand that you are much older than the 2 students, but don't worry about it. Just give us some demonstration. How many methods can you use for the towing? Maybe 3 or 4 methods. Just give us a regular one. So earlier, we are just seeing some underwater search and rescue, and now we can see some of the service life-saving rescue. So now they are doing the towing life-saving. It is quite commonly seen. So just like 50 meters, and we will see how they operate. But for this kind of towing life-saving, it requires a lot of skills. You have to save the others, but at the same time, you have to protect yourself. The summer vacation is coming. Some of the kids would like to go swimming, but from time to time, there may be some dangerous situation. So it is very important for us to know how to save others. All right, let's give us a demonstration. No competition, just a demonstration, okay? So this is a typical way of the towing life saving. So at this time, you can see the volunteer is holding the head of the simulant. We have to ensure that for the simulate, he or she is face up. And second, the volunteer have to protect themselves. So actually the volunteer is doing a backstroking. The backstroking is more commonly seen in doing the towing life saving. So at this time, we do not have to consider the condition of the people who are drowning. So we just want to make sure that both the volunteer and the people that are drowning are safe during the life-saving process. As you can see, for this volunteer, he's actually holding the simulant. It feels like it's difficult for him to completely hold the simulant. So we just have to ensure that the simulate, the people who are drawing, have to face up. So his head must be floating above of the water. And second, we have to make sure that the volunteer is safe. Let's see a third demonstration. So as you can see, the volunteer is holding the arms of the people who are drowning. Can you give us some fourth demonstration? So if you cannot keep the head up for the people who are being drowned, so that will be very dangerous because you cannot save him. And also, when you are doing this kind of rescue, you should not face to face with the people who are being drowned. And sometimes the people who are drowned, he or she is struggling inside of the water. It will cause more challenges for the people to save you. Can you give me a faster demonstration? Actually, we can see one of the volunteer is trying to dive inside of the water. So I would like to simulate that situation. For example, if I am the victim, if I look at you in the water, what happens next? So for the volunteer, he has to swim around with the victim and then hold the people. So these two people should not be face to face inside of the water. So it is not an easy task for the life saving. We need to apply some strategies and consider the safety of both people. So if we have some lifeboats, we could use all of those other apparatus, but if not, we could only have the human to do the save. I want to have an interview with him. So what is your job? Actually, I'm an officer in a harbor, and the reason why I joined this search and rescue training team is that I think it is very important for me to master all of this knowledge, because I will apply this kind of knowledge into my daily work. So every month, I will receive this kind of search and rescue training. Have you ever been engaged in some search and rescue work? Yes, but all of them are just rehearsals. in my harbor, it is quite safe. I never save any people. Thank you. So inside of the water, actually, these are the two major subjects. Thank you for your demonstration. I think you're quite confident in the contest. And actually, this year is the second time for the maritime search and rescue training for volunteers. And it is at a national level. So what is your ranking last year? Last year, we ranked number 1. We hope you can win again this year. There are some incidents just happened for the volunteers. What are they doing right now? Fortunately, the volunteer is being saved. That also shows that the importance of this kind of training. Because in real-time situation, there may not be other volunteers who can save your life. So once again, it is not an easy task to be a volunteer. You need to have a lot of hands-on training in order to be qualified. Let's get to know more about this operation. So you're also doing the operation on the solutions on underwater air supply interruption. So they're actually just doing some hands-on experiences to understand some of the chaos. So it requires a lot of work, a lot of technical skills. For the volunteers, it takes long for them to train themselves in order to be qualified. Actually, I can tell the underwater rescue is quite risky. So even though the volunteer is with the hood, I want to know whether he can hear my voice. Now, if I press this button, I can actually communicate with the diver. How do you feel? All right, I think he's quite busy right now. It's time for him to give us a demonstration. Actually, I want to try this. I want to understand what it feels when I get inside of the water, but it requires a lot of technical skills. Actually, the volunteer is learning on how to dive. So I'm from CCTV. I would like to interview you. So where do you come from? I come from Tianjin. So have you ever tried diving? No. And today I just want to experience diving. But I think I'm not qualified enough. I need to go through a lot of training. Just as the coach told me, if you want to save others, you have to save yourself. So, do you think this is very important for you? Yes, it is very useful to conduct this kind of training. So, what are some of your thoughts after you take this training? For myself, I think I'm quite bold. I'm not afraid of water. I'm just a little bit afraid of animal, and this is a must-have the skill for myself. I will learn how to rescue others and protect myself. And actually, for women, it is more difficult for me to learn how to search and rescue others. As you can see, all of these volunteers are men, so I think it is also very important for women to know how to save yourself and save others. I'm actually a volunteer coming from Lantian Rescue Team. And how long have you joined the team? I joined the team in 2015. Have you ever participated in the real-time search and rescue work? Yes, I did. Also underwater search and rescue work. All right, congratulations to you. Hopefully in the future, you should know more about the rescue work. And we just talked about some of the service and the underwater life saving. It actually requires a lot of work for you to conduct. So once again, it is not an easy task. When you are saving a life underwater, it requires a lot of work and a lot of technical skills. In addition to all of those technical knowledge, well, I remember I have to show you one vehicle. And today we have give you some introduction about the underwater life saving and also give you some flavor on the service life saving. And we can tell for some of these volunteers, they may run into some challenges. So they have to learn more knowledge to protect themselves and save others. So in addition to the underwater life saving, and also we have service life saving. So you need to have certain kind of skill in order to help others. You cannot just hold the victim directly because it is quite dangerous. I would say this is a very technical. In addition to that, I would like to give you some introduction about this technical vehicle. We have some vehicles for the maritime search and rescue. For this vehicle is actually coming from Beihai Search and Rescue Center. For this kind of vehicle, actually we can drive through to the vessels. So inside of the vehicle, there are many apparatus. For example, the AI robots and the cables, etc. So what are some other apparatus do we have in this vehicle? Let's take a look later. If you have any questions, please leave us a message. So by taking this opportunity, can you give us some introduction on what qualifications do you need to have in order to be a volunteer? I believe many people would like to be engaged in the search and the rescue work. So what are the qualifications for them? So for us, first of all, we will publicize some announcements to recruit members for the search and rescue team. And also through the selection, we will pick some of the members who are qualified. Do you have a physical check for all of these volunteers? Yes, they need to go through a body check. All right, let's check out the vehicle. All right, all of these devices are ready in the vehicle. Let's take a look. So what is that? It is a power box. So for this one, we can put it on the shore. So through the computer, we can see some of the underwater footage. And for this one, it can actually provide electricity for some of the devices. So you can see there are different ports and also hosts of this power box. You can actually control the ascending and the descending of the AI robot. And also we can put some of the torch lights underwater. Also, we can see there are some other handles here, can help to pull and drag some of the boats or rafts. So we can use the raft to pull it over with the life-saving raft. So this will save a lot of energy for the human beings. And I realized there are a lot of cables that was equipped inside of the vehicle. And also we have a lightning system that was actually attached to this vehicle. So for example, this light can go together with the diver. So what are these? The green one. This is just a cylinder inside of the vehicle. And also we can see the AI robot and also the firefighting hose, some tanks and the cables. All right, thank you for introduction about the vehicle. So these are all professional devices that will be used by the search and the rescue team. For the volunteers, they may not use all of these technical equipments, but they have to know how to operate this kind of equipment. So we have just talked about the underwater life-saving, but I believe most of the operation are actually conducted on the vessel or on the boat. So for example, if the vessel is quite distant from us, how can we approach the vessel? And if there are some injuries happened during the operation, how can we provide first aid to those injuries? And actually, I think it also a tough job, and also it requires cooperation. And yesterday, actually, I tried to save some of the injuries, but I think it is quite difficult to do that. And also, from time to time, we may do some firefighting job on the sea. And also, there are specialized uniform we have to put on. Even though it looks quite simple, but it requires a lot of hard work for us, and we have to provide the training to the volunteers. For the volunteers, they're actually coming from all walks of life. That's why we have to provide all of this professional training to them to make them qualified. Later on, we will go to a playground to see what other subjects do we have for the search and rescue work. So by taking off this opportunity, we can discuss more about the search and rescue work. We have just talked about the recruitment of the volunteers and the qualifications for the volunteers. On the internet, we will post announcements to recruit the volunteers, and they can register for the search and rescue team. And we will screen all of these volunteers. For example, they have to be very healthy. We don't accept any volunteers who have a heart attack, heart disease, or high pressure, etc. And also they have to learn some languages. For example, from time to time they have to communicate with some overseas foreigners, so they have to have some like basic qualification of language skills. And also, we also welcome volunteers from different subject areas from the society. So for the volunteer, it is not just the people who are saving others. Sometimes a translator can also be a volunteer. For example, for some people, after they are being saved, probably you don't need to provide some medical service to those people. Instead, you are giving some like tutoring and comforting these people. So actually, no matter where are you from, you have the power to be a volunteer and help others. And we also talk about whether the forces has been growing in the past few years. Actually, in the past few years, we do see a growing enthusiasm from the public. And we realize more and more people are joining the team for the search and rescue group. For example, for myself, I'm a volunteer and I'm ready like 24 hours per day. And as we just talked about, there is a growing number of volunteers in recent years. So now we are at a maritime college. So in this college, we could see some of the students, they're actually doing some drills. Now they're practicing the subject of targeted cable placement and the first aid treatment and the personnel transfer. And also they're trying to putting on some of the life jacket. Now you can see all of these volunteers, they're practicing the targeted cable placement. For the cable placement, it is more difficult than you thought, because they have to throw out at least 25 meters long. So that is the minimum requirement. So for the width is around 6 meters. So this is one of the subjects. So in total, it is around 6 meters in width. And you have to throw out the cable to around 25 meters. So that is a minimum requirement. And the angle, the degree, is about 40 degrees. It is quite difficult to do that. And some people, they may make some mistakes. So why we need to place the cable? For example, from time to time, we see some of the vessels and boats are trapped on the sea. So we have to place the cable, just like an anchor, to pull the vessels to the safety area. So for this weight, it is around 450 grams. So we have control our strength to throw out the cable. Maybe I will have a try. So this is the students from the Maritime College. So who is the instructor? So I realized that for last year, the underwater life saving, the team has won number 1. So what's the performance for this team for the targeted cable placement? Alright, maybe I will give you a demonstration on how to place the cable. It is a very important step to place the cable. So for example, on the sea, if you want to save one vessel or boat, you're actually placing one of the cable on the other one and drag it towards the safety area. Right, let's take a look. This is the way how they did it. I think at least 50 meters. Are you a volunteer or just a visitor? We don't know how to do it. I'm just a visitor, and just no way I could do it. It's your first time to see this kind of practice? We are actually people who are working at the deck, and I just try to observe the operation. For some of the people, they can place the cable on 50 meters away. Actually, it's quite a tough job, because as you can see, there is a range, there is a scope that is restricting the direction of the cable. You have to make sure that the cable is located in the correct place. This is very important for the accuracy, because sometimes if you want to save a vessel or the boat, you have to place the cable exactly on the other vessel. For example, if one of the vessels is out of power, you have to place the cable to the vessel and pull it to the wharf. And also at the same time, you have to consider when and how to place the life belt. It is very important to save the lives. So who's the winner in placing the cable? So how long have you practiced this kind of skill? I've been practicing for some time, but not long. Sometimes I can do a good job, but not always. Let's take a look on the cable. So when you take back the cable, you have to put it in an orderly manner. I'm not sure what you're doing. It seems like you're actually putting a knot on the cable. So you actually tidy up all of the cables. So by doing that, the cable can travel for a long distance. I think this is quite dangerous if you hit someone with this kind of rubber. Maybe you can teach me on how to place this kind of cable. And the reporter will do a demonstration. So now you're doing a revolving type of cable placement. So by doing that, you can make sure that the cable can travel to a long distance. But you have to be precise, otherwise the cable will land in an inaccurate place. So by doing that, you can ensure the distance, but just make sure that you are placing the cable within the range. You can see the instructor is actually providing some guidance to the reporter. Let's take a look. Alright, it is quite good for your first attempt. Maybe I throw it too low. I have to make sure that the direction is correct. It is not an easy task. I have to train myself. I think the distance is around 10 meters. I have to practice more. And also you have to learn how to tidy up all of the cable. Maybe it is my first time, so I cannot do it very well, but I have to practice. So you have to consider the distance, but also you have to consider the direction. Thank you. Wish you all the good luck for the contest this year. Let's take a look on how to tidy up the cable. So make sure that you're not making a knot. You just follow this direction and tidy up the cable. Now you can see you're actually circling around the hand, but you're not making a knot. Can you give me another demonstration? A correct version. Right, let's see what it looks like. This is quite a distance. I just rotate myself for 180 degrees, but I can see for this volunteer, he actually makes 2 turns in order to throw out the cable. So for all of this area, the volunteers are practicing the cable placement, and later on they will compete on each other. We are seeing some people who are earlier doing the underwater life saving, and now they're coming to this area to practice other subjects. Yes, they can attend the contest for the cable placement, and also they can go back to the swimming pool to do some diving rescue practice. And in this area, actually, we visited yesterday. This is from Langang delegation. Now they're also doing some training here. So what is your job? I'm a firefighter. So I work as a volunteer part-time. So we have the instructor here, Miss Jiang, what we are doing right now. So now we are doing some first aid treatment and the personnel transfer. So for example, we have to treat the wound properly and provide some medical services to the injuries. You can see you have to check some of the basic condition of the injuries. And when necessary, you have to do a CPR for the injury. And also, you need to check whether there are some wounds on this person. And also, we have the first aid box to provide some basic medical service. And we see some swallowings on the legs. And you can see when they're providing some first aid treatment, they're actually communicating with other volunteers. So for example, now they're trying to tidy up the wound for the injury. Now you can see they're actually disinfecting the patient. We're actually using some ethyl alcohol to disinfect the wound, but we will not actually touch on the wound. Now what we are doing is some basic medical service. And later on, we will transfer the patient to the hospital. Now you can see the volunteer is biting up the patient. So basically, they will wrap around 5 to 7 circles. It's just a simulation. Now you can see we have all the first aid equipment ready, including bandage. And also we are simulating a situation for the fraction of the leg. But on site, we cannot do some sophisticated treatment. That's why we put some board just to fix the bones. And also we have stretcher here to carry the patient and transfer this person to other area. So let's take a look on this board or plate. So the length of the board needs to be longer than the ankles. So by doing that, we can fix all the bones. It will not cause another blooding or fraction of the patient. Let's take a look on the stretcher. So when we are doing the stretching, we are actually using a simulant. So if the person is injured, we will not use this kind of stretcher. As you can see, this is a movable stretcher. And this simulate is actually an injury. This is how we do it. It is quite flexible for the stretcher. Actually, it is not easy to use the stretcher. It is also a tough job to carry the stretcher. Depending on the injury, we will use different kinds of injury. For example, if you have injury on the backbone, we will use a specialized stretcher to carry the wounded. Let's try it out. I used to try it, but I think it's very difficult to carry the wounded. When you're walking, you have to check the physical condition of the patient to make sure that if additional medical service needs to be provided to the patient. So earlier, I tried to simulate one of these operations. I think sometimes if the patient is very heavy, it requires a lot of strength for us to carry the stretcher. So when you are carrying the stretcher, you have to check from time to time the physical condition of the patient. If the patient gets pale, probably you have to do a CPR for the patient. So all of the volunteers will be trained on how to do a proper CPR on the patient. Currently, more and more people know how to do a CPR. For example, inside our television station, most of our reporters know how to do a CPR. We all join a kind of training to know how to do it. Maybe you could give me another demonstration on that. So you have to check the breath and the neck of the patient. And also you have to listen to his or her heartbeat. And we need to make sure that the patient is placed in a very safe area. And we have to make a correct judgment to see whether this patient has gone into shock. If this person has lost the consciousness, meaning that this person has went into shock. And also we should feel the pulse and the breath of the patient. We have also need to hear the breath of the patient. If this patient did not have any consciousness, no pulse, no breathing, then we have to do the CPR for the patient. You place your hand in this position and then press. Use your own strength to press. And for the frequency of the pressing, it's about 100 times per minute. So we have to press for around 30 times. That is the minimum requirement. And also you have to do artificial respiration when necessary. But first of all, you have to make sure that the patient's cheek is up. And then you do the artificial respiration one by one. And then you go back to the CPR treatment, 30 times of CPR treatment, and we go back to the artificial respiration. And we'll continue to observe the physical condition of the patient to see whether he has went back to consciousness. Even though we say that today is a training for the maritime search and rescue, but it is also important to know how to do the CPR treatment and the artificial respiration when necessary. Currently, we could see many people get familiar with the CPR treatment, and it is very important in daily life to save others' life. Hopefully, we can get a lot of takeaway from today's training. Thank you so much. Actually, there is another subject. That is the firefighting on the boat. If one vessel is on fire, so for our volunteer, they have to put on all of the professional firefighter equipment and put off the fire on the vessel. So here we have the coach, Mr. Zhao. So can you give us some background on this kind of firefighting operation? From time to time, there may be some fire happening on the sea. First of all, we have to understand when and where does that happen. And also we need to have our staff to put on all of the firefighting equipment and enter the vessel and put off the fire. Okay, just give us a demonstration. I think this is a thermal-proof suit. It's ready for you to put it on. So it is a training, so it requires speed. So all of these are volunteers for us. So for us, we are actually working on a vessel. It is a compulsory training classes for us. So all of these people have passed a test in order to be qualified. And you can see they're putting on the fireproof suit, and also they have to take a tank together with them. So all of this information are very important for the volunteer. For some time, maybe some of the firefighters get injured and the volunteers shoot back in. But it is very important for them to know how to properly wear all of these firefighting suits. So all of these uniforms are actually equipped in the vessel. So for example, the volunteer want to save some lives, but when you pull in the vessel, you found that there is a fire on the vessel. At that point, they have to prepare themselves to do the firefighting for the vessel. also for the rescue, all of these firefighters have to take an exhausting tank with them. So for this kind of uniform, it is actually equipped in all of the vessels. So if there is a fire happening in the vessel, for these people, they need to understand how to put on all of these clothes. So from time to time, we will organize the firefighting drills. For these students, actually, they know how to do it because it is a compulsory curriculum for them. But for the volunteers, they may not know how to put on this kind of uniform. That's why we provide this kind of training to them. And also, it requires a fast speed. Actually, it's quite difficult to put the uniform on in a short time. So for this gentleman, actually, he's a freshman in our college. For less than 1 year, he learns how to put on the uniform. So people who are learning the major that is related to maritime work, so this is a compulsory curriculum for them. But for some volunteer coming from some business entities, they may travel all along here to learn how to put on these firefighting clothes. In order to save others, we have to improve our own capability. I would like to interview the students. So did you learn this kind of skill? Yes. This is a compulsory class for us, even though we are at the freshman stage. So, of course, we will consider the overall plan for the curriculum. Sometimes we will have this kind of classes in the first year, and sometimes we will have this kind of classes in the second year. So first of all, which all of you can win the contest in this year's search and the rescue contest. So actually today, we are at the place where the 2019 Maritime Search and Rescue and Contest Training for Volunteers takes place. There were hundreds of volunteers came here for the training to learn the knowledge about the maritime search and the rescue. And today they receive a lot of professional training, including the underwater knowledge, underwater life-saving knowledge, and towing, life-saving, and how to operate the life-saving raft. And they also learn some knowledge on how to do a boat rescue and a diving rescue. And also they have some basic understanding on how to provide first aid treatment and personnel transfer. And in recent years, we have a great number of volunteers joining this mission, meaning that we have more forces who can help us for the maritime search and the rescue. Even though a lot of people would like to be engaged in this operation, but they may not have the technical capability required. That's why we host this kind of event, the Maritime Search and Rescue Training event. So more and more volunteers can join this program and improve their skills and capabilities. So in the future, when there is a challenge, there is a risk, so these volunteers can save more lives while protecting themselves. So we just talked about the selection criteria and qualifications for the volunteer. And if you have this kind of intention, you would like to be engaged in the maritime search and rescue, you can actually take part in it. You may not necessarily be someone who will do the boat rescue or the first aid treatment. If you have any kind of skills, you can contribute yourself to the search and the rescue training task. Thank you for watching.